And welcome to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com and or revolution.radio. This is Planet Collingwood, Open Roundtable. My name is Monty Dean, and you're awesome. A big thank you to Tony and the boys for the last 2 hours. If you enjoyed the last 2 hours, please donate to the station at either options. Website, freedomslips.com or revolution.radio. To keep Studio A and B on air. Revolution Radio is totally listener supported. Everyone's a volunteer, as well as I think it is the longest running crowd-funded project on the internet today. And also, if I'm wrong, it doesn't really matter. It's still been going. I think we're in our 9th year, the way it works. 2011 was the first year, so we're in the 10th year. No, I'm not going to get stuck in that again. I figure it out and then I forget about it. It's like there's a small town on the way to Ballarat called Balan or Ballin or Balan, or I always think of a dwarf. Anywho, if you'd like to join me for a bit of a chinwag, there's lots to discuss. Please drop a message on Skype and I'll add you to the call. And my Skype handle is Monty_Dean, and just give that a call, or Freedom Screen, I believe that works as well, and pop in and have a bit of a chinwag, as I said, which means talk, chat, converse. Many things are happening. I see impeachments moving forward, and I saw Ben Shapiro shared on Facebook the opening statements of the White House Counsel, I believe it was, pointing out that the president hasn't done anything wrong. Anyway, millions of dollars are being spent because the Democrats are sore losers. Also, Hillary Clinton, that thing, a lovely person. Anyway, she's come out apparently and said that no one likes Bernie Sanders. So the question is, do the Democrats want Donald Trump to win the presidency again? Okay, I know it's English, but okay, be me in thanks, bro. Me speaky no English. I think he wants me to add him. Right, okay. The art of conversation has died, ladies and gentlemen. So, now I have to find him out. I'm producing myself. There we are. No, then of course you change. I have praised the Skype gods, you swine. Where was I? Yes. I think the Democrats are trying to get... Oh, now it's just gone to white. Oh, great. So I have to start again. Yay. Oh, dear me. I think I can hear you, Paul, but unfortunately my screen's gone white, so I have to start again, which means recording it, and so everything's lost. Yay. I'll see what it's... No, now it's gone white. Okay. What if that happens? Right, so yeah, now now it's gone. I will get to you in a moment for Viking. The window toggle actual size. Let's go with actual size. No, it's white. All right, give me a second. I have to start again. And we started recording. Okay, now I should be able to add. So let's see. That's wasted 7 minutes. Thank you, Skype. I'm going to see you in the car park, my friends, and we'll have a discussion with Uncle Wrench. Paul, are you there?
Always on mute. Sorry. Well, yes. Sometimes I've turned off the phone, then I've heard, there's a mute button. Well, and yes, I'm here. I'm waiting for the big ass storm to come around, and yeah, it's been stinker day, Oh, my leg's been carrying on a bit, which is funny because it's hot and cold. And yeah, I'm just waiting for my bones to tell me, is it going to be a good thunderstorm or not? So it's about to, because it's blowing a bloody gale.
Yes, it has been windy. Very Melbourne day. It's going to be 32, so it'll be grey and overcast, and it got to 29 or something. So we can talk about weather, how it's most likely manipulated, as well as a natural cycle for 200 years or however long, because the magnetics of the planet are playing up. Someone that may be able to add to that is Viking. How are you, sir?
There we go. I'm doing good, Monty. Yeah, just kind of hanging there again. Just woke up from my nap, and it's just intense. I just can't believe, time again. We've been mentioning how time is just flying by. It's actually it's exponentially just gotten much more intense. I just can't believe that it's already the 21st of the month. Didn't we just have New Year's? I mean, I'm not sure what's going on here. Plus, again, the Schumann resonance has been spiking about every other day now. It's been spiking.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And when we say spiking, it's not like, oh, I got to 16. No, it's getting up to 96 or something ridiculous like that. And there's a rainbow effect, and it's going off like a frog in a sock in a fry pan, as one would say here in Australia. Interesting enough, too, there's a new moon in about 3 or 4 days on Saturday, the 25th. So I'm just wondering where we're going to go from there. And I just found out that I didn't lose the recording of the opening of the show. It's here. I just have to edit. I don't know if it's ever happened to anyone else, but I was just using Skype, and then it just went completely white, like a whiteout in snow. I'm sure that's upset some people on the left about racism. It's like completely white. How dare I? Oh my God. So I must be the only one that happens. I'm up to date, and yeah. But here we are now. So it is fascinating where, yeah, like the moment takes forever, and then you look at your calendar and it's like, wow, it's June. it's it's a weird form of time traveling, and like here in Australia anyway, because we're in summer, in the southern hemisphere, or the outer ring for the flat earthers. Let's be fair. School goes back next week on Tuesday, for the state school runs, and I think the private school's a little bit later, because Australia Day's on Sunday, and because we're Australian, you can't have a public holiday on a Sunday, so you have it on a Monday. So there's a long weekend. So anyone listening that has friends in Australia, you probably won't hear from for 3 days because they're all gone fishing because it's a very long weekend. But it is moving forward.
Is that
Sorry,
is that deep sea or shore fishing, or is that inland fishing?
I think the stereotype is you go inland. Well, it depends where you are. Most of Australians live on the coast. However, say Paul maybe back me up here because he's a Melburnian as well.
Stereotypes.
Sorry, I was talking. My mistake. Oh, thank you. Yeah. Being a Melburnian, you end up at the Murray, which is 3-5 hours drive away. So it's. I'm not a fisherman either.
3-5 hours. Well, depending. No, there's better places than that. You go to Goulburn if you're interested, because that's actually really, really cold, because that's where all our water's going into, the aquifers that fill into other places that run all around the state. So the Goulburn's a big one. The Murray, yes. Not so much. The Yarra.
So what are they fishing for?
Oh, well, if you want to go freshwater, it depends. We've got brown trout, we've got rainbow trout. Then we've got our native fishes, yellow belly, and that's up at the Murray. and also Murray cod. So that's for us Victorians, inland. Also, you've got slimy, which is a blackfish, and a few other natives, but you've got to catch or release them because it's not the season to catch them. So.
Yeah, so it's a sport instead of hunting. Yeah, and so if you're off the coast of South Australia, there's good tuna fishing down there, isn't there, Paul?
Well, the what we call mac tuna happen, and then you get the odd occasion bluefin, depending, and these are the ones that go worldwide.
Yeah.
The big ass blue.
And if you feel like protesting and yelling at people in Japanese, you can go to New South Wales and you can watch all the whales running away from the Japanese whaling boats.
The whaling boats, exactly. Yeah, and the big dredges from the Europeans too. Yeah, we've got them as well. Yeah, but we've had the whaling vessels and the dredges from, well, unfortunately, Japan for a long time because they've been doing supposable inverted commas research.
Yeah. Dear listener, why do you keep catching the whales? It is for scientific research. Yeah, but you don't need to cut open a whale to see how a CD player works. All right. It's basically they like to eat them. It's there's no point for it. The industry
is it's totally perfect on their scale. Tasty part whale, not so tasty part whale. Research done. Over.
Yes. I haven't gone out into Port Phillip Bay because if you look at the map of Australia, Paul and I are in Victoria, and there's a bay called Port Phillip Bay, named after a guy called Phillip. Go figure. However, we have seals and dolphins in there, and I'm not sure if you can see the curvature of the Earth, but it's very hard to see the other side of it because it's very far. But it's fascinating to see the container ships going along the horizon slowly in, because you just reminded me they've dredged some of the bay so they can get bigger ships in, and they weren't sure of the environmental damage that was causing.
Did parts of the error and parts of the heads.
Yeah,
that's correct. But they didn't do it over. Did it? They did it actually in schemes where the sludge could because they got heavy metals and this and that, and the heavy metals got trucked out. So we actually tried to do it correct. Over.
No, sometimes it happens. It's interesting with because of all the fires. It's very Australia. It's been 3 weeks in the new year, as Viking has pointed out. Where did it go? Australians aren't really that phased with where did the 3 weeks go, because we've had bushfires, floods, and hailstones the size of golf balls in the first 3 weeks. However, that's just Australia. That's what we get. Because we had the bushfires. Technically the season started early in September, and of course you've got everyone screaming climate change, and apparently Greta is at Davos, because I was about to say Davros, but that's a character.
Was on TV earlier today.
That's a character from Doctor Who, and she said that because Trump
Davros.
said, yeah, I am the creator of the Daleks. No, wrong side. Trump actually said that they'll plant more trees, which kind of makes sense. But these just plant more trees, the house is on fire. I'm just wondering, if we believe the whole carbon scam tax scheme, how can writing legislation today stop climate change, which is a natural phenomenon? I find it perplexing. Even blaming the Prime Minister of Australia.
Go ahead. I'm pretty sure you know this. My climate changes daily, doesn't yours?
Oh yeah, I live in Melbourne. We have climate change every day. But it's also I follow suspicious observers Ben Davidson on the YouTubes, yeah, and he's part of the electric universe, and he can show through actual science that the sun is causing most of the problems with climate change. The thing is, climate change has been weaponized. The global warming thing didn't work because the weather and climate's getting more extreme, but they still have that undercurrent of global warming underneath, where we have to fight climate change. How? Stop the greenhouse gases and emissions. Yeah, but we don't have a greenhouse effect, because if you've been in a greenhouse, it's hot, humid, sweaty, and the plants are going off. However, the plants aren't.
Exactly, and everything grows really huge.
Yes, yeah, the green and everything else like that. I did see on the ABC website, the Australian Broadcasting Corporation, that there's a map of like, see how much CO2's in the atmosphere, and apparently it's all in the northern hemisphere. Like, okay, so we're getting to the point like, who do we follow? What's the point of, which do we believe in that respect? Because on one hand, there's not enough CO2 in the atmosphere, and that's sort of affecting the planet and the plant life. And then you've got the other side saying there's too much. However, if it's 0.04% of the atmosphere is CO2, and 97% of that is naturally occurring, which leaves it 3%. Well, is the planet that close? What, someone can sneeze and the planet's going to spiral into the sun? I don't see Mother Nature being that fragile of an ecosystem. It's like, no, if you have to flatulate, fart upwind, because downwind you'll knock over Hawaii. It doesn't make sense.
Well, she was in Davos. She actually spoke before Trump, and she was doing her little rant about how we pulled out of the Paris Accord. That's one of the first things that Trump did when he took office, is he pulled out of the Paris Accord. What a sham! I mean, as you were pointing out, Monty, is this more or less to globalize and weaponize climate change was to charge you carbon tax. That was their main and only goal for the entire setup.
Well, that's how where my thinking it comes from. My setup of like, something's off, because if you wanted to save the planet, you wouldn't employ a tax. And so if you go to the end, I think I got this from David Icke. He put forward, like, if you go to the end result that they want and then work backwards to where we are now, you'll see how it works. And they want everyone in their smart cities controlled by everything, in very small apartments, and totally spied on, and statistics and everything else, like
manipulated into stuff that you need to do, not stuff that you need.
See, now, Paul, you have to stop talking, because you've expressed too much carbon, so your carbon footprint is too big for this week. So you'll have to be quiet for the next 3 days. That level of stupidity, where it's 1984 and you're under the microscope and you've been manipulated, and you have to, like, for some strange reason, if we had some car head, I know, Paul, you are, don't get me wrong, but other people, car heads and motorheads and everything else like that, here in Australia, they've put forward, I think it's a UN idea, so something's wrong with it. They want to lower the speed limits to cut emissions from cars. And I think that would just cause more emissions.
But that's okay, as long as they're shrinking the engines to do so. Because if you're only going that fast, you only need this size engine. So you can't run away from the police officers. That's pretty simple, I reckon.
Well, that makes sense. Yeah, actually, I mentioned it to my mum, and my mum actually asked the questions like, why aren't the car makers giving us an option, or correct me if I'm wrong, Paul, since you're a mechanic, I can point at a car and go, that's a car. You can do all these other things. They can do up to 240 kilometers an hour, 120
Yeah, that's
miles.
fun.
Yeah, but where legally?
Well, mainly on the quarter mile or around racing tracks, but they used to have the Northern Territory. But yeah, not allowed to do that either anymore.
No, or the nullarbor, because if the car's designed to run at that level for a certain amount of time, the engine, if you never go past the halfway point, the engine starts to wear and tear. If I'm correct, it's not if your engine's sort of like say optimized to work at 140 kilometers an hour, you probably get better efficiency out of it because legally the highest rate speed at the moment in Victoria, I believe, is 110 kilometers an hour. So if you just up to 40, so you can do passing and everything else like that. But if it's another 100 kilometers an hour, what's the engine? What engine? The potential isn't being used, as well as
Well, actually, it just depends. It depends on what type of vehicle it was. If it's because 9 out of 10 times, if it's going that quick, you're actually sucking down more. It's more fuel economical to do about 150, not 200, or 140 or 120. It depends on the engine.
I get your point.
But there are standards for certain engines, and then there are highly tuned race car engines, and motorcycle engines are the best ones to actually go on that one aspect because they're always torquey and tight. So,
Viking, you wanted to chime in?
Well, no, I had a high performance X5, and they actually told you at the dealership that about once a week you got to take it out on the highway and just do a full bore, which that basically just cleaned out the engine, because otherwise you're right.
Out the cobwebs, they say.
It builds up carbon and it does bog the engine down. I mean, you get a high performance engine, you have to maintain a certain curriculum about getting out and just opening up the valves.
Yeah, this afternoon I was actually past. I believe it was a Lamborghini, Ferrari Lamborghini. I couldn't correct. It was a sports car. I could tell because it was only like a foot off the ground, and it came off off Eastlink, and it was in a 60 zone, and I'm sure it was only in second gear. But those things can move, and room and thump, and it's like. Unless you're driving to Sydney, Australia's not the best because you can't use it in the suburbs. It's not the best place to have that type of car unless you do traveling where you can actually open it up and let it rip.
Maybe. I rest my case on that one.
Okay, fair enough. My thing is, the
Yarra Junction was fun, and that's all I say. There's multiple types of Yarra Junction, and but anyway.
Fair enough.
I say maybe. Yeah. Over.
Because the division, there seems to be, we can clearly see it. There's a lot of division on the planet. And because of the fires, because there's that drought, which I put forward that is man-made, because the government's withholding the water and selling it to China, in a short version of it, as well as there's 40,000 fracking wells which use all this water. So the main aquifer, I can't remember its name, it's above the Murray aquifer.
Yeah, the artesian of...
Yes, that's the one.
Now that's what too.
Yeah, but artesian also, it's very close. It starts with A. We'll go with that. And because that part of Australia is very close to the equator, so they only have 2 seasons, dry and wet. Guess what happens in the wet? There's a lot of rain, and so that fills up the aquifer, and then over time it runs out, and you have natural springs and everything else like that. That aquifer's been drained from the fracking as well as just the fracking mainly, and then you've got all the surface water which is being diverted up in Queensland because how can I explain it? It's like I'm going to probably get it wrong. The distance of the waterways is from, say, Boston to Miami, or even Seattle to San Diego. That sort of distance, or even more, how it travels. It's the Murray-Darling system, which is the veins of eastern Australia, and
3,000 and almost 4,000 kilometres or so.
yeah.
So that's about 32 or 100 miles of water on American scale.
And most of those rivers system now is dry, bone dry. Hundreds of thousands of fish have died, and this is over the last, help me out, Paul, what, 2-3 years, even more? Because it has been building up. It wasn't just over this summer, because I've first heard about the problems with the Murray-Darling system. Oh, even Barnaby Joyce, who is a politician, so ignore all that.
Scams were fine. They held mega, but they didn't release it at the right times.
No, and that's why you've got the land's completely dry. And so I would say climate change, not the carbon kerfuffle CO2 stuff, but the natural aspect of it, of the magnetic fields are getting weaker, and so there's more cosmic rays coming in, and more energies ramping up the system. I would, to explain what happened to the Australian fires, I'll probably talk for 4 minutes and then say at the end, most likely, as well as climate change, which is a natural cycle with the planet, because it's seen before. Because if the water and everything else like that was allowed to flow in eastern Australia,
Victoria, Wales.
Yeah, you understand what I'm trying to say. It's like you wouldn't have it bone dry
the
and
devastation because
it's wet.
Yeah, it just burn itself out with the ember fires. It will just keep on going. But this has just been a massive drought. That's probably, it's not unheard of. Don't get me wrong. But where the water used to be is where the fire lines were contained back in the day. But no, they've been siphoned out. So that's the reason why we've got it as bad now. And it's not climate change. It's waste of water management. Pure and simple. And that's all it comes down to, is greed from the government. And they shouldn't be able to sell our water because it's illegal. Since 1936, when they did the referendum and the thingo for that massive blaze that tore through very similar country, right? They made that, and then it went to Ash Wednesday, and then to Black Saturday, and now today. And they're only not letting out water; they've reduced it by half. Over.
Yes. For those playing at home, I like saying that. For people listening outside of Australia, let me paint you a picture. You have, we've discussed the water. Now, we're in the driest continent on the planet, so we kind of need water. It's written into our constitution. Pause for effect. Yes, we actually have a constitution. We don't use it, except for when Gough Whitlam got sacked back in 1975. But let's move on. The mismanagement and the corruption of the government just with the water. Now, to add to that, you have green policies. Now, because I enter the world of Twitter and I come back with news, so you don't have to go to Twitter. I put on my armor and I battle with the culture wars and the SJWs and just weird people. Some of them nice, some aren't. The forestry management. Now, Australia's been on fire for tens of thousands of years. Most people understand this. However, when governments get in and it's green policies, It's not the Greens because they've never been in power. However, their policies and ideology goes to the ruling the party that's in charge in government. I don't like saying ruling; it's a bit sort of monarchy. And so you've got green policies where, say, if Paul and I own farms next to each other, I decided to clear all the dead wood from the ground and Paul doesn't, I would get fined by the council and Paul's farm would burn to the ground because of all the fuel. This is the stupidity of it. You've got mismanagement in forestry, you've got missing water, and on top of that, they've been defunding the fire services, which mostly volunteer. So you can see the cluster, rude word, of what's been going on, and this is what upsets me. It's a triggering point, and I'm trying to evolve and move forward. However,
I've got the word that you're actually looking for. It's cluster fire truck.
Yes, thank you. I think people understand what we were saying. It triggers me, and I have to move forward and understand and letting go. But when people scream, it's climate change, it comes across as someone's manipulating all of this, so the general public asks for their demise, because if they believe the lie of it's carbon-based man-made climate change, they'll ask for action, the problem, reaction, solution, and the solution is you tax everything and half the planet goes into poverty while a billion people die of starvation. And then they can say, oh, but you asked for this. Instead of using oil, let's use hemp. That's where I'm at. So that's
well, you know,
Well, you can't make biodegradable. Sorry, shoot, Viking.
That's fine. It's fine. I mean, we're coming into a point where, going back to the beginning of the show, you know, this the way things are happening, how fastly these timelines are converging and collapsing in on themselves, and you know, the people are basically waking up. They really are. I mean, I see humanity waking up. You know, thousands of people every day, if not more. You know, creating this convergence of who we are, why we're here, and how can we manage this planet responsibly. And it's just a matter of, I'm going to say, 7 to 10 years before we have 0 point energy. This whole thing is going to become just a pinpoint in the past. And you know what the Galactics are saying is that we're here. We're at the juncture where we can manifest and create anything that we want, and that it's a matter of time before we see a collapse. I mean, not if but when, and there's going to be a major collapse. And they're also saying that best, you know, in as well as everybody else, as far as all the survivalists and whatnot, the preppers, what they call them here, you have to be 2 to 3 weeks prepared for this, because there's going to be a shutdown of all the banks, there's going to be a shutdown of all the pumps and the phones and electricity. But my point being is that as far as this gas to hemp, that's a great alternative, but 0 point technology is just a stone's throw away here, and it's going to happen, you know. And this is also one thing just to change the topic completely, where we ourselves as a human body requires a certain amount of energy from the planet in order to run ourselves. When we get a unification of our chakras and our DNA, and when they start to actually, when we hit our 12th strand of DNA, there's going to be a metamorphosis where the DNA strands and the chakras are going to condense into a Merkaba, and we will also become 0 point energy. We will be manifesting our own power source, and this is where we're headed, and we're talking about, you know, decades, you know, if not sooner, that we will be not only ourselves in 0 point energy of our conscious awareness, our body, or our constitution, but the planet as far as deriving an energy source. I want to talk about Puerto Rico here, but I'll stop.
Oh, well, we'll get to that. Interesting enough that in the culture, Doctor Who, yes, I'm still watching it. I'm not enjoying it, but I'm still watching it because I'm going to get content out of it for my YouTube channel. The latest episode was actually about Nikola Tesla, and it's fascinating. They sort of, in a very basic way, explained how he wanted to give free energy through the ether. And so, from a spiritual point of view, or the ascension, or the raising of consciousness, people may just go, "Oh, that's what Tesla thought," but that idea has gone into their subconscious because they've seen the episode, and so when that's part of the awakening, where uh, you see an idea or you see something like the 4 minute mile, when no one could really break 4 minutes when they ran a mile. Then one person did, Bannister. Ever since then, people have been breaking it because they can. If he can do it, I can do it. So by sharing that idea, Tesla, into the mainstream, I think that's part of the. You could put it under disclosure. You can put the movement forward. People may just say, "Oh, but that's just a silly children's sci-fi show." Yeah, it probably is. I think this season's terrible from a storytelling point of view, but the idea has gotten in. Whoever saw it, the idea has gone into their head, into their conscious or subconscious, and even that's, to me, there's an element of synchronicity. If they're actually talking about Tesla, and there was Edison as well, and Edison was portrayed as not as the villain, but a bit shady and all that type of thing. I can see what you mean by a stone throw away from 0 Point, where I don't think they've planned it that I will. Okay, we'll get Doctor Who to do this. However, it's like those alien films where subconsciously, when people tap into the creative, the prime creator, as a simple label, gives the idea and starts leading towards where, hang on, okay, by seeing it, like with the UFO side of things and the galactics. People say, oh, it's just, instead of a Star Wars reality, we want a Star Trek reality. Because of Star Trek being on TV for so long, the new series suck because they've gone woke. However, that utopian sort of aspect of it, where humanity all works as one, and instead of accumulation of money, it's trying to better yourself and become a better person and all that. And it's not going to be a massive shock when it happens. And even as I mentioned, suspicious observers earlier, they're put forward, and this is from a scientific angle. There seems to be a energy wave coming from the center of the Milky Way, and it's hit Bernard and maybe Alpha Centauri as well. And so they're predicting there's going to be a catastrophic mini nova, as I think, if I've got the my research right, a mini nova from the sun. And I find that fascinating.
Yeah, they've been talking about this thing in the so-called woo-woo world for about a couple of years now, where they're predicting this energetic wave that's going to bathe the planet, and it's going to be rainbow colors, and there's going to be this huge flash. They call it the flash, and this could be very well what is referred to as the event horizon. Where it's going to literally shut down all of our 5G, and it's going to cause this dynamics for us to kind of wake up and smell the roses and come out of our sleeping beauty slumber. Just kind of there is this. Because we're so locked into this repetitive syndrome of life. For thousands of years, we're just maintaining this illusion of subjugation and slavery and pain and suffering, and it's going to take something major to just to knock the block off the pedestal, right? And this is what they're theorizing. The Galactics are backing it up, that there's going to be this huge wave. When? I have no idea. People are, it could be, again, we're looking at 7-year cycle, and I think everything that we know to be true and what we're praying for to be part of this evolution and revolution of this planet will occur in the next 7 years. This is a very pivotal nexus of our of humanity. And what you're also referring to here is when you have this the so-called self-mastered individual coming from their passion and their creative will, they have indoctrinated our conscious awareness to the point of where we have moved forward. All the great artists, the great musicians, the poets, the engineers, the mathematicians, they've all come in with their conscious awareness, seeding the unity conscious of this planet, and it has changed it. It has changed the way that we view life. And this is kind of what you bring in these first of all, it's a code. A code is a source code that we are programmed with, ones and zeros that go into our DNA, and then it basically expresses through our left brain as a belief structure, which manifests our reality. Right? That's a code. A codex is something that literally, when you can grab from that an understanding of why and how it's happening and what you have done to create that, that's the awakening process. That's called a codex, and that burns out the virus in your DNA of the ones and zeros of the code, replaces it with a codex, which gives you this kind of aha moment. Well, these codexes then go into the conscious spirit of humanity, and it becomes a seed that anybody, when they hit a certain point of their awakening, they can tap into it through the quantum dynamics, through their intuitive, or they call psychic powers. They literally can download. This information is there. You just have to get to that point where you can receive it and be able then to nurture it and understand it and have the strength and courage to apply it. It's so locked into our dogmatic rituals that we just, they filled us with so much doubt that we can't give ourselves permission to break away.
Well, I find interesting is on a basic level for the idea is when there's a flash and everything electronics turned off, like everything, and we're put back to the Middle Ages. We are so close spiritually, that fog has lifted. I think once you get past the shock of everything's just being turned off, what do we do now? But there isn't that suppression. On some documentaries, they've shown because we can't see the radio frequencies, but if you could, it's like a sea, just a fog, and we're bombarded and everything else like that, where we're constantly around radio frequencies and signals. If that's turned off, we have more of a chance to do what you said, Viking, tapping into who we are, and then remembering who we are, and we remember to fly again, and we can be our own energy source because we are a 0 point engine as well. And it's not going to be easy, but I think it's easier when everything changes, even if it's a magnetic pole flip, because the planet will change direction of its charge. Everything gets fried. Oh, go ahead.
Well, they're saying that's not going to happen because that would cause sea level changes, and it would be too much. It'd be too much duress. They're really managing this, and this is why the Nibiru never came around, is because they altered his course. They didn't want to see the duress it was going to cause on humanity. I mean, this is our third try. It's our third try to make it out of the subjugation. The third try that they've tried to, create a kind of a utopian environment for humanity, and the pole shift's not going to occur. But I also believe that this has to happen again. The 5G. I'm having a hell of a time trying to get the Galactics to come in to the council, because there's so much disruption right now. Just imagine walking into a classroom and you got 10 chalkboards and people taking their nails and running down the chalkboard nonstop. This is how it's like for the Galactics. And I think by having this pulse will clear the waves. And I think at that point, we're going to start to see some major contact.
Interesting enough, Andrew Bartzis, the Galactic historian's been sharing stuff on YouTube over the last. Yeah, I'm with you, Viking. It's been 3 weeks. wow, like, this weird time thing where everything's quick and slow at the same time. The Iranian general that was taken out, apparently that wasn't supposed to happen. He was supposed to still be alive into the 2030s, and he's part of the negative side of for whatever is happening. However, it seems to be that there's an outside force that's come in and made a power play, and that's disrupted whatever's going on, and there's a new timeline being evolved or something similar to that. And I don't know if it's sped things up or how it's going to play out. I don't think it's going to be a negative result, and we're not going backwards. It's just there's been a change, and if that resonates with me because of what's the energy's going on at the moment with everything. So at some point, someone decided, well, we'll just do this anyway, and certain people can see, or what, blah 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 blah. We have to wait and see, but it's interesting to be a cork in the middle of the ocean, bobbing up and down.
Yeah, they refer to that in Sanskrit as a sea of samsara, where you're being affected by the ebbs and flows of the societal, the societal brainwashing of the status quo or the rhetoric. It's like going round and round, but you're going nowhere fast. It's like it's you have to find that undulation of your soul. Oh, and another thing too is that the God spark, when they talk about the God spark. So when you become a Merkaba, so when you hit your 12th DNA, so first of all, when you hit your 8th, that is your psychic ability. So you're getting into your quantum dynamics of your higher essence and your galactic soul grouping. And then the 9th is your remembering who you are, why you're here, engagement in life, and benevolence, and then being able to then reach out into your galactic heritage is your 12th. At that point, this huge metamorphosis occurs where your DNA and your chakras collapse into a Merkaba, and that's actually the birth of a planet. So you actually are creating your own energy field, and with that comes your dynamics. And I forgot even why I was going to bring that up, but that's an interesting side point.
Yes, it's where it's fun if I'm taking on board observing that role of being a watcher, because that joke always gets me in Dogma, Alan Rickman, where he's talking to the descendant of Jesus. You're going to meet two angels. They're watchers. Guess what they do? That just always gets me. It's like that's simple. It's great in the way he delivers it. And so by learning to observe and not to pick a side, I'm not losing energy, and that's one thing I've was told, or I've found out that I'll just use the term 5D, whatever the next level is, everything is so malleable, if that's the right word. Things change. It's not in stone like in the 3D, in the physical world. In this less physical world, things like bananas are oranges, and then the next time, oh no, bananas are purple now. And they're both correct. Instead of just one or the other, it's now one and the other, where you have more options, and it's fractal out. There's less restriction, there's freedom. And so by just observing and not picking a side, it's great for comedy, because the Democrats are extremely funny, and I can, Republicans, I'm sure I can find comedy in there, but at the moment the Democrats are taking my attention. I was going to say something.
I can't wait until we have the nightscape of the forests of Pandora, in Avatar. That just completely took me back. I mean, I remember forests like that off world, and it's absolutely magical to where you can. But imagine being in that situation and being able to float around and mingle with the fairies, and I mean, it's gonna be amazing. Absolutely mind blowing.
Yeah, and it's there's an element of it's a first time. However, I'm going to pick a number. 90% of it, we're remembering 90% of it. Then there's that 10% newness.
I just realized, that the term mind blowing came out of the '68 era, right? The hippies. And that's exactly what's happening. You're blowing your mind because the mind has been such a fixture on the mantle dictating our lives that literally is blowing the mind.
Yeah, I'm out of my mind. That reminds me, I watched Robert Downey Jr. was on Joe Rogan, and I watched it yesterday. It's only an hour and 15 minutes, if either gentleman piques your interest. And Robert was actually saying he learnt from Warren Beatty. What's your action in this scene? It's like, well, I'm driving a car and I see an attractive. He's playing. It was the film The Pickup Artist, where basically he's a sex addict and he's got to keep getting laid all the time. And so, from an acting point of view, what's your action in this scene? It's like, well, I get distracted by the car. No. What's your action? Well, I'm trying to drive to work. And then the scene is, while I'm trying to drive to work, he gets distracted by an attractive woman. But the action is driving to work. And so you can apply that to life in where you don't have to worry. It's the whole getting out of the way. Like 70% of it is just getting out there. 80% of success is turning up. I would say 70% of success is probably getting out of the way, where your action is, I'm like, for me, doing training in micro business. For at the start of the day, it's like, well, what's my action today? I'm going to go to this course and try and learn as much as I can. And that's all. I didn't put any restrictions around it, like, but it's boring and I won't use half of it. And I didn't let the mind go. How would you explain what I'm trying to say? You understand what I'm saying, Viking, where it's you can create your day, but it's anything can happen at the same time.
Well, it can create your day, or it can enslave your day. I mean, I would say the premise of all Eastern religions is to go within, which means you have to let go of the mind and start coming from your intuitive heart, right? Because the mind, if you're in the mind constantly negotiating out of the mindscape, you're going to be caught up in an illusory reality, which is holographic, which is finite, which is manifesting the precept of what you believe to be true in your reality. And this is of the mind. So why do you say, leave the mind, you're out of your mind, but it's mind blowing, because you're collapsing that paradigm. You're collapsing that scape of negotiation that we have been subjugated to, enslaved to, and now we're coming into a truer precept of self-reflection, which is of the heart.
Yeah, and that's a perfect time. Paul, turn your. We are up to a break. There we go. Paul's standing in the rain, I would say. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, revolution.radio. This is Planet Collingwood, Open Round Table. My name's Monty Dean. He's Viking and he's Aust Paul. I think we're up to the music. It should be if not, there's going to be a moment of zen, and then the music's going to start. I'm trying to get better at this. After 5 years, I'm going to get better, and I think we'll come back and talk about how we're out of our minds, and that's a good thing, because usually when you hear that, it's like you're out of your mind. It's like, well, yeah, I'm happy as well. So stick around. We'll be back after these messages. You're listening to Revolution Radio. And we're back. Thank you, Viking. This is Planet Collingwood Open Roundtable. My name is Monty Dean. You just heard Viking doing the support, which is good, because I need it, really, because I've been out in the field all day and learning about business practices. Huzzah. Also, we have Ospol on board. This is an Open Round Table. If you'd like to join us, please just drop me a message and I'll add you to the call, or Monty_Dean, as well as Freedom Screen. If you enjoyed the last hour, please go to either freedomslips.com or revolution.radio and donate what you can. I believe, if my math's correct, 4,000 people pay $10, we would get a year's worth of funding, and we can continue on and not worry about it. Oh, excuse me. My drink is attacking me. Help me now. Also, when you're at the website, I think the archives are still being transferred. Unfortunately, the mighty Nighthawk has transitioned from this physical plane onto the next one. You just heard his voice during the promos, and so there's been restructuring of Revolution Radio, and we're still here, and we're taking the ball and going for a run to honour Nighthawk's memory by keep doing what we're doing. So. You can donate for that, as well as there's merchandising. There's caps and mugs and T-shirts and onesies for the little ones. And once you've done that, pop into the chat room and hang out with like-minded, like-hearted, just liked people. At the moment, there's RD47 and Jer Bear. RD47 I just love because it reminds me of a Star Wars droid. I don't know if he likes that or not, but that's how I remember him. So he also has a YouTube channel. He's connected to the Hopi, and very fascinating videos from what I've seen as well. Now, we're talking about out of your mind. It's interesting, say a century ago with psychology and God is dead and all of that, where it's all mind-based, and you had Freud and then Jung coming along, being mentored by Freud, and then Carl Jung saying there could be spirituality involved here, and tangenting away from Freud because he wouldn't change his ideas. So it's interesting, even like you mentioned Nikola Tesla last hour, how the mad scientist always most likely looks like Nikola Tesla, and because he had a good idea that could save the planet, but you couldn't make money off it, and so he was demonized and he lost funding as well. It's interesting to see how all this stuff is unfolding, as well as the way that social media and the internet, where how did Sean David Morton describe it? We have the Library Atlantis at our fingertips, and people just watch cats videos or porn. So yeah, it's all about anyway. I'm not doing stand-up now. But there is awakening going on. I think someone's using the crisis of the fires here in Australia. That's what I was going to say. If anyone is intrigued enough, do some research on the California fires and the Australian fires and see what correlates. I don't think there'll be many direct energy weapons being used here in Australia because Australia is designed to burn. However, the defunding of the fire services in both places is fascinating. That's been going on for 5 to 10 years, and so it's if it's fun, just check it out.
Yeah, I'm CFA. I totally agree. Over the last 20 years, when I first joined to now, it's some of the old stuff. And that's just ridiculous compared to 2020, you know?
Yeah, there seems to be either hubris, stupidity, or it's a tactical plan. I mean, there's probably more options. However, if you know the last 2 decades or more, the land management has changed, and there's been defunding. 11 years ago, or just over 10 years ago, here in Victoria, we had what was called Black Saturday, where 147 or 178 people died. It was a 40-degree...
200 and...
a lot.
Yeah.
Lot. And that, because they weren't, people weren't prepared or complacent, I think that's the word that comes to mind. Now, what I find interesting is there was a Royal Commission, and I know the head guy of that because I'm friends with his son, and he's a good man. And so I can't remember the recommendations, but I'm wondering how many were actually observed and implemented with what's happened recently. The fires here in Victoria are a completely different area than from my understanding from where it actually happened 10 years ago. There's been a failure and because of all this anger and shock, and it's the worst ever. Go ahead.
And same ferocity on
You're breaking up, Paul.
The vibrant.
Yeah, and also I haven't just remembered. There's been chemtrailing, not as heavy as the United States, and so around about now, mainstream people stop listening to me because they see the planes and the streaks across the sky, and it's like, oh, that's ice. I'm like, yeah, sure. And so you've got sparkler dust as well as Max Egan. If you look at some of his videos, this is no public knowledge that the mainstream media doesn't care about it, but the Navy, they have drones and they can drop ping pong ball sized balls that ignite, and so they can start fires. Why would you have something like that in Australia at all? What is the
No, well, they're phosphorus balls. No,
Yeah.
they're phosphorus balls. They actually get dumped. They're like a ping pong ball, but once they get punctured, they get dropped out of a certain plane. It doesn't have to be big. It only has to be a little single engine.
It's smaller than that. I've seen the drone. It's like half the size of a Cessna. It's unmanned drone. They've got that.
Yeah,
so
they've
yes,
got 50 ping pong balls. Yeah,
yeah.
Punch them and then let them go.
And so you add all up that we're talking about, the lack of water, the aquifers, the spraying, the phosphorus balls, and the lack of backburning and forest management. Then someone lights a fire. There's been 200 people that have been arrested for arson or something similar. Now, this is where it's interesting in the arguments that's been going on. People call it an arsons emergency. People are calling it a climate crisis. It's all of it at the same time. No water, the sparklers, and then there's probably chicanery, and then you have the fire services being cut back as well as all the fuel. It's a perfect storm. And go ahead.
You have to be fair here. The 200 arsonists, I would say probably 195 of them were probably farmers just back burning, trying to save their farm.
Possibly. I think about a third were adolescents, teenagers, because it's school holidays. So there are. Yeah, even now that's like when I say.
I mean, they're getting arrested for trying to save their farm by back burning into the fire. I mean, this happened in Oregon. Oregon was the same way. They were trying to burn out the farmers during the whole Bundy situation there, and the farmers were back burning, and they were getting arrested, thrown in jail.
Yeah, that's to save and stop fires and everything, and that's where I was mentioning. The idea slipped from my mind. So I'm out of my mind again. There was actually, going back to the Black Saturday fires in Victoria, a man cleared about a hectare around his house, fined $100,000, and during the fires wasn't touched at all. And so the people have been trying to do backburning and management, but that's what I was going to say. It's not the Greens party, it's the Green policy. And instead of red tape, they call it green tape, because farmers want to, backburn and like how the Aboriginals do. But I think finally more people are aware of it now, obviously, because of, half of the size of half of Europe's burnt down here in Australia, that they're getting, politically correct, the traditional owners, or people that were stolen from, the Aboriginals, because they know the land and they can look at a valley and say, okay, there we'll start a fire in the winter, and it goes out slowly and it clears all the underbrush, so the fire isn't that intense. However, fires that have been going on, where I've seen footage of, it looks like a phosphorus ball, one of those balls that Paul was talking about, just exploding, and this white flash. But it also could be a tree just boiling, because the eucalyptus and other types of trees are full of liquid and moisture, and they get to the point where they boil. And
actually, the eucalyptus is one of those volatile trees that has oil. The eucalyptus oil is one of those volatile trees in the world. I mean, it wouldn't take much to get that tree just exploding.
Yeah.
And this is what you have what's called a firestorm, because it just you add a little wind to that, and it just can come at you at 50 kilometers an hour.
Yeah, John Wayne, not the actor, shared in the Revolution Radio Skype chat footage of a fire truck in South Australia where a fire front actually engulfed the truck and just moved very quickly. And that's sort
It's
of
called
the
a
only...
level or a flashover.
Okay, yeah.
Well,
It's the only time I've been emotional in the entire time because of just like the bravery. It's not stupidity. It's the serious bravery of like they're more heroes than say going to war or stopping the Japanese, that type of thing, because they're just fighting nature. But the intensity, Paul, because you've worked volunteer with the CFA, you
I've
may
done
have.
both.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I explain the scene to, and then you may share some anecdotes if you choose to. They're driving. It's completely dark except for the fire front. They catch up to the fire truck before them. Then the flames are coming through, and it's doing 100 kilometers easy. It's moving that quick. It's sort of a purpley blue flame at the front of it instead of just the natural.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
no, it's more blue first, and
yeah,
then you go up higher, then it goes purpley, and then it goes ferocious reds and
yeah,
oranges.
yeah,
And
and
yeah, and
I think
that's cool.
I
But
think
it depends where you are.
yeah, well, I think it was just like a grass fire, but you've got the heat and the wind. It's coming
Okay,
through.
grass fire is actually more containable than a canopy fire.
Yeah.
So yeah,
But it was moving so fast, and so they I can't remember what the term is, but they put up these heavy woolen blankets up against the windows, and there's a sprinkler inside the cad that goes off. At one point, the truck in front of them backs into the other one because they can't hear each other over the radio. I think there was some of their squad was missing, but I'm hoping.
you can't hear nothing.
Yeah.
All you hear is like a jet engine coming at you.
Yeah, and that was just 4 minutes. And these people are doing. How long is a shift? Like how long? 8 hours, or do they do like
16.
all
16,
at the
16.
front all the time, or do they actually sort of get
No,
20-minute breaks
they-
or anything?
they-
Or
Yeah, no, you got a 4-hour break for
Okay.
half an hour or whatnot, but you hardly take it. You got to go back out there,
Yeah.
So
yeah, they're exhausted, and all that is building up the anger, and then a scientist that gets funding says, "Oh, it's climate change," and the prime minister is being a prime minister. That's the nicest way of saying it. People have a target for their anger, and they just offload and hammer straight at it, and then yeah, it's interesting to see how people use the tragedy and how things could be stopped. And the cynic part of me is like, but you built a house in a forest in Australia and it burns. Now, I'm not saying I wish death on you. People, my house got flooded. Where do you live? On a floodplain. I wonder if there's a connection. But the thing is,
the councils, councils. That's plain and simple. The cynical thing is councils. Get rid of them.
Well, yeah, isn't Australia, we've got one extra level of politics or something like that. We've got federal, state, and local council, or we've got 4 or something, and everyone else has 3. I can't remember exactly how that works, but we do have something because like we have a mayor in Melbourne, but we don't really care. I'm rhyming. But our premier, see, I'm rhyming again. The premier of the state is like the thing. And yet then you have in the United States, and someone can correct me if right, is the mayor of New York City is up at the same level. Then there's the governor type, I'll stop now. I'm probably losing myself. But yeah, we have more for some strange reason.
Can we change the subject?
Yes.
I want to talk about Puerto Rico.
What's happening there?
You haven't heard.
No.
So there's an earthquake there 3 or 4 days ago, and the firemen discovered a warehouse twice the size of Costco, full of aid from Hurricane whatever that was, the 1917.
Yes.
And it was packed full of aid that never got to the people. I mean, pallets 5 to 6 feet tall with water, food, tarps, medicine. I mean, everything was there. Flashlights. I mean, everything was there that could have saved hundreds of lives. I mean, 3,000 people died. A lot of it from just bad water and not being able to, dehydration and being cold and they had enough supplies here that they could have literally subverted a disaster, and they withheld it because they're trying to extort the United States. We already gave them $3 billion. I mean, what more do they want? But they were trying to show how inconsiderate we were towards the people by holding back the aid that we gave them. And this is like, who do you shoot first? They fired some local ministry, but this goes all the way to the top. All the way to the top. These guys should be castrated and stuck on a pike in the middle of town. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. This is crimes against humanity. This is not this goes all the way to the top. And of course, Puerto Rico is owned by the deep state. That's where the Federal Reserve has its corporate seat, is Puerto Rico. Corporate office, Washington, D.C. Nothing to do with the United States. District of Columbia. Puerto Rico is so embedded with the deep state that this is what they had to do. They had to sacrifice thousands of people to try to upend Trump and to expose him for negligence. I mean, when are we going to start to understand that we're being subjugated and being delivered absolute poop show, of information that this wasn't even covered on mainstream media. Nothing. I had to get this on alternative media sources. There's videos out there with these guys walking into the warehouse and scanning and showing all of this food and just medicine and water, tarps. I mean, it's just unbelievable. And this has been shocking. I mean, I'm literally shocked.
Well, actually, so I do. Thank you for reminding me. I was probably so shocked I blanked out because par for the course, these people are sick type thing. However, you are correct, and thank you for bringing it up. I saw the video where I think they broke into it or they got into it, and the people in there were flipping out because they've got all this stuff that they needed 2-3 years ago or whatever it was. It was after the election.
2017.
Yeah, 2017. Because I remember Donald Trump Jr. tweeted Trump was right again. And that's the video I saw. It was actually from Donald Trump Jr. And I believe, I think I read there that some of the perishable, the food, has been going off for 5 months. So they can't use all of it because the food's gotten rotten. Some food has gone rotten.
Well, this is warehouse number 3. There are parking lots with 40-foot containers full of perishable foods that has been it's not the past 5 months. This is for 3 years they've been sitting in these containers with decomposing and being rat eaten.
Yeah.
This is one of 3. This is not just only one. And they happened upon this by happenstance. The Puerto Rican firemen were investigating structural integrity of buildings after the earthquake and discovered this cache.
Oh, well, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a revolution in Puerto Rico, because I don't see anyone going, those wacky people in government. It's that is mass murder on a nation. That's almost genocide level of criminality, where And I think it comes down to that certain people don't like Trump, so the media are probably being told you can't report on this because it makes Trump look good because he was correct. And that's the stupidity that we're dealing with the deep state, where it is all about face and information. However, you've got a whole country that has been used as a pawn in this weird ass chess.
Well, absolutely, man. This is again crimes against humanity. This goes all the way to the top. I mean, when you're in charge of a country, you have hundreds, if not thousands, of people dying under your watch because of your actions. That's treason. I mean, it's just again they should be castrated and piked in a downtown square like Stalin. You know, it's just unbelievable and unthinkable.
Yeah, well, we're getting to the level. There's the Empire Files with Abby Martin. She's very attractive. She used to be on Russia Today. Quit though because she was told what she had to say, and she's not that type of person. And she's pointing out, like, why is Joe Biden one of the front runners for the Democratic nomination for presidency? He's a sexist and and he's losing his mind. And just the whole impeachment thing is because Trump rang someone and asked about what was Biden doing, because Biden actually said on camera at the Foreign Relations Council of Foreign Relations, that it was a bribe, wasn't it? It's like, stop investigating my son.
It was a quid pro quo. It was like, you do this or I'll do that. You do this and I'll do this, you know?
Yeah. If you stop investigating my son, because if you don't, you won't getting the $3 billion that you're.
He said you got to take out this main. There was this one individual that was investigating as a prosecutor. He said you have to get him off the case, eliminate him, or I will withhold billions of dollars. That's exactly what he said.
Yes. And he told people in front of a camera, and everyone's gone, oh, Trump's the bad person, because he asked a question about it. And then...
Exactly. That's...
Yeah, and then, Paul, I'll just give you a second, and then please jump in. And then I think the first president ever released the transcripts to the general public. And that's the first time that a president of the United States has done that with another international leader, Paul.
Oh, not with WikiLeaks. Oh, that's so amusing, though. You know, apparently they like using him back in the day, but now he's going to, which is an Australian citizen going to the Americans, and Trump actually liked him because, well, he didn't have to do anything back in the day. But I agree. Joe Biden and his 5 sons and the cronies, and, you know, if you're all a bunch of thieves, and you get tarred with a brush, you know, aren't you yeller? Hey? You know,
well, yeah, I think someone's shared very quickly.
That goes really good for the American scale, aren't you yeller?
I think Biden, Pelosi, and 2 or 3 other Congress people, all their children,
and Clinton, Chelsea also.
Yeah, and the Clinton, of course, the Clintons have their finger and everything, aren't they? Yeah. But all their children have jobs in the Ukraine. I mean,
and China.
And China, it's like, yeah, the corruption's getting. It's fascinating. At some point, like, there's going to be a revolution, but it's not going to be a traditional revolution like in France, where they start cutting off people's heads.
Well, you know, Monty, you nailed it. Those people, the reason why they're doing the impeachment is to cover up their dirty deeds. That's exactly why this is moving forward. It's only because they're so guilty of quid pro quo. They're so guilty of their actions that they're doing a look here but don't look there, and everything they're saying, as Q is saying, they're guilty of. Anytime they open their mouth, they are exposing their guilt.
Yeah, Yeah, it's like Bruce McDonald. When they started bringing up impeachment, it's like the timing of it is completely wrong. Why would you do it a year before an election? Because it's just going to make I think the Democrats want Trump to win again. It just looks like that way.
Well, it's because of Biden. I mean, they're trying to cover it because they know if Biden falls, they're next. It's like dominoes. Biden's at the head of the pitch here, and this is not because their strategy is only out of survival, and completely it's a survival tactic. It's not a what you would call a strategic move. It's a survival
exactly.
move.
Yeah, they're covering their asses as much as they can. That's quite amusing. Did you see the Democrat lineup or the Democrats lineup? Mate, could you imagine seeing all of them people face to face and saying, can you actually ask me one or answer one question straight without laughing?
Are you referring to the latest debate that they had on the weekend?
That's the one. Yep. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
There was about, I don't know, 10 or 15 of them in between there. I didn't really watch that much. But, mate, would you ask them and ask for a real answer and then go, but I know where you live, and then ask them to answer the question correctly? Not a hope in hell.
Well, what I do find two things. Very quickly, Viking, because I think this will make you giggle. Two things that I learnt from the Democratic debate on the weekend was that's a lot of old white people up there, and CNN, if you know what I'm talking about, that incident that's with Sanders and Warren. The CNN showed their colours. For those who missed it, basically the host said to Bernie Sanders, "Did you say that to Miss Warren that a woman could never be a president?" "No, I didn't say that." Then she goes to Elizabeth Warren, "What did you feel like when Bernie Sanders said blah 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 blah?" She ignored his answer completely, thought he was lying, and it's like that's the level of journalism right at the moment. Sorry, Viking, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying is that I can't even watch it. I mean, I literally start to get sick to my stomach when I even hear these guys talk. And of course, today was the first day of the impeachment hearing. I just like it's bad vaudeville is what it is. It's bad vaudeville. It's just it's not even. I mean, I cannot even listen to it for 30 seconds. I get sick to my stomach because just hearing these guys. They're so deep in their reptilian heritage. It makes me sick.
Well, yeah, I've started formulating because it's an idea that's been passed around, but it's I'll express it this way. The new TV show, The Impeachment, the first episode came out today, and I don't like the writings. I don't see it going to another season. It's just going to be a one season thing and fizzle out and not go anywhere because it is theatre. It's very bad theatre. If there is evidence that Donald Trump's done something wrong, he should, the due process and he'll get in trouble. However, for that to happen, you cannot ignore the DNC and everything that's been said in the public forum, where Hillary Clinton and Benghazi, Libya, which is been 9 years of hell, and they've got slavery. It's like, well done. Biden, as we just mentioned, and everything else like that. Pelosi, Maxine Waters, who looks like a predator. I can see why people want to bring in term limits for Congress people, because if you earn $5 a year as a congressman or a senator, how the hell are these people getting $1,000 after 10 years? They're making money by serving the country, but it doesn't add up.
What does when you're doing the quid pro quos and insider trading, that does add up lucratively. I mean, you're talking about Pelosi's $140 million. I mean, you're right. You wouldn't get this on her tenure. Not even close. I mean, these rats are just cleaning up, and this is why they're very upset. You see them upset is because their little show, their behind the curtains has been exposed. And one more point here is I can't remember. I'll have to come back.
Oh, don't worry. It's Planet Collingwood. That happens a lot, where it's like I have a thought, and it's like, oh, I'll come back around on the next
It's
way
Monica
through.
Lewinsky. No, behind the closed curtains was Monica Lewinsky to start off with.
No, that was just a lovely distraction to try and get Bill out because Bill was doing good things, allegedly. I was watching Joe Rogan and Jimmy Dore, and Jimmy Dore is a comedian, and he's got his own podcast where he does interviews, but it's mainly just him talking. It's his opinion. He's got, from what I've seen, good political commentary where he said this whole impeachment thing is a farce because if they thought Trump was guilty for whatever it is, they wouldn't signed over $135 billion for military aid or for whatever it was. And like you can, cure poverty for 65 million or 65 billion in a year. And so it's fascinating. They've got money for all this war, $130 billion, and you still have homeless people. It's really weird. But that's the thing, say, the whole climate change thing with the man-made sea levels. Why are banks giving out loans for coastal properties? The banks aren't that stupid.
No, they're desperate. There's a difference. They'll loan you. I mean, they're doing subprime loans again, where, especially in the auto industry, you can be homeless and get a car. Let's put it that way. This is how bad it is. They're just dying. I mean, there's so many cars that are, at the end of the year, all these cars get shipped into the Nevada desert, and they just get landscaped in huge parking lots. It's just unbelievable. Yeah. I remember what I was going to say. What's interesting here is the absolute genius of Trump. He could have at any time in the past 3 years. He has enough information, enough dirt, with all of Hillary's emails and bleach bits and all. He has enough information that he could have, brought anybody to court, but he's not doing it. He is letting them. He's letting them shoot themselves in the foot. He literally is holding back. He's holding back. He's doing a rope-a-dope here. He's taking the hits. His team is behind the scenes, bring about the investigations that in due course of time, everything's going to come out. And he's just letting them in the meantime just show the hypocrisy and how ludicrous their actions are. I mean, if you can't see it as an American or as a humanity, then you're still deeply asleep at the wheel, because they are exposing themselves to a degree that is it's untethered. It's just absolutely, it's just incredible how much stupidity they progress with every day.
Yeah, give them enough rope and they'll hang themselves. And I was thinking then, and I sort of either it came to a conclusion or there was a slight download. Be interesting to see what is going to happen in the next 11 months, because I don't see that it feels like a breaking point or a breakthrough, because, well, I can't keep doing this for another 12 months. We're roundabouting, as I like to call it, and we're getting to the point where either the roundabout's going to collapse or something's going to make us turn left or right, depending where you drive. But we're going to be fling out, and there's going to be an end point, because it's energetically I feel worn down. And how long are we going to go round and round and round and round? So.
I'm with you here, man. I've been watching, the geopolitical, geoeconomic structure now for about 4 years. I mean, intently. I wake up, I spend about 2 hours checking my 50 channels. What's up? Zero Hedge, Gateway. Just all of the, the alt medias and of course the spiritual channels and whatnot. And I am just like, what they keep on saying is that, I mean, what the Galactics is saying is that we are in the Nexus. It is happening. It's happening. More is happening behind the curtain than we realize. More is happening behind the scenes than we realize. And that we just have to hold true and hold fast. I mean, again, it's almost February, man. I mean, how fast is this year going to fly by? I mean, we're going to wake up tomorrow and it's going to be the 11 months, So it's like we just have to really just dig in deep. We have to dig in deeper than Georgia Tick here and just hold true.
Yeah, I just find it interesting from my perspective. I think you're similar as well, where because we stay in the now and try and find that 0 point. Even from my perspective, still learning to there's an element of time, and the days drag for so long, and then all of a sudden snap, oh, it's over. I have to go to bed now. So but I was just starting to get going, and then oh, it's Tuesday, Wednesday. Oh, I'm seeing someone next week. And then you look at the calendar, it's like, wow, New Year's Eve was 3 weeks ago, and it feels like 8 months. It's fascinating. The connection to time clearly has changed.
This is how it works. We have been, again, the mindset. The mind is a male, analytical. It negotiates. It basically comes up with abstracts, figures stuff out. It's a male, and this is what has been. The mind's been wet wired with these with the source programming in our DNA, with subjugation and slavery, with pain and suffering, with dogmas, with judgment, despair, poverty. We have been source programmed into our wet wiring of the brain to keep us in this malaise. What's happening is you're waking up the female. They had to kill the female off, because the female is the creative intuitive. So you have the creative intuitive right side of the brain, which has been dormant. This is based on us having 3 strands of DNA active. And we start to activate our other chakras, and so the chakras and DNA are in tandem. You bring on your 4th chakra, you bring on your 4th strand of DNA, right? So what's happening here is, as we start to understand that we have a source programming that we can be in control of, which is through the heart monad, not the heart chakra, heart monad, which is our true operating system, that we can bring this new dynamics to where it's alchemistry, it's alchemy, it's how things acclimate. You, through your course of action, through your skill set, skillcraft, and skill art, through your passion, can literally then mix the left and right brain as an operating system of unity. So this is now coming from a unified source system of perception. So now we are in our creative, psychic, feminine, intuitive side that can now choose how we want to negotiate life through the left side of the brain. And this is how we're evolving. We're evolving out of the subjugation into this unified precept where you're engaging both left and right side of the brain. And as your chakras then start to activate, as you start to get these codes, these codexes are congruent to the codes as such. So if you have a particular lesson to learn from a karmic ambiguity or an incongruence to your nature, it will show up as a trauma or show up as a lesson to be learned. And as you start to understand that and unfold the trauma, that code gets replaced with a codex, which is an understanding of forgiveness, non-judgment, and then you have to repeal the vindication of the ego. The ego is always wanting to manifest its life based on the needs and wants of its addiction and survival. That's left brain. Now we're coming into manifesting our passion. Manifesting our passion, we're unifying. And when that happens, we come from a finite precept into the infinite perspective of your quantum dynamics, which brings you into the 0 point of non-time, which is the infinite state of our true existence.
Yes, and I I hope I can attract energy in the form of some money, so I can feel relaxed where there isn't that constant feeling of survival. Because a lot of people recently, oh, you have to hustle. You got to hustle and hustle and hustle. And then someone shared, you don't have to hustle. You just attune to the right frequency of abundance. You don't have to push all the time. If you're in the right frequency, in the right vibration, that will unfold naturally. And yeah, I could write it. Oh, go ahead.
The way I did it was when I was 28. I grew up kind of in a middle lower class family where we were always, every Friday we got a $20 bill in a divorced situation, and we would go out and buy groceries for the week and, moved from house to house, and it was all very, it was a slice and dice childhood. So when I was 28, I came to the realization that the reason why I was in poverty is because I believed I was in poverty, because I grew up in poverty, and I had to literally understand that poverty was the dominion that I believe existed in my reality. So it manifested. It's not so much you focus on the abundance, but you have to eliminate that wet wiring, that source code programming of poverty. You have to eliminate it out of your DNA. Once you do that, you put out a vision into the universe. The vision will then manifest into a manifestation, and that there is a prime creator will literally answer any vision that you ascertain. It may show you elements in your life that is still sabotaging that vision, but ultimately you will gain that precept. But you have to understand that you have to get out of that source programming of the wet wiring of the left brain that still believes poverty exists. You deal with that and open up your the vantage point of prosperity. You will be engulfed. But you have to understand it is a deprogramming more than trying to invite it, because you can't invite prosperity if you're still holding on to poverty.
That makes sense, yeah. I actually went to a quantum psychic healer on what you would refer to as Halloween, but it's technically Beltane because I'm in the Southern Hemisphere. I'm a stickler. But the 31st of October, it made me giggle. It's like, well, that's a perfect time. And found out that a couple of lifetimes ago, or however long, 400, 500, maybe 1,000 years, could be 2,000 years, I was a monk. And one of those poverty-stricken monks where the Lord had nothing, so I should have nothing, and I'll just eat beans for the rest of my life and get by and have no possessions. I think what they're skipping out on is Jesus had that connection to 0 point where he didn't really need anything because he had everything from a spiritual, energetic point of view. And, if you can turn water into wine and loaves into bread and all that type of stuff. So what we found out
is... He had a real good job too. Don't get me wrong, he was in Carpenter's bloody...
he did his dues. He worked for his stepdad till he was 30 and then went for a walk. What we found out is in past life is because the Akashic... I was stuck in an Akashic loop, Akashic record loop, because I was stuck in that sense of poverty, and so that's been rectified.
That'd be a karmic loop, not an Akashic loop. A karmic loop.
Yeah, karmic loop through the Akashic records. That's how I was explained. But yeah, I was stuck in a loop because.
Yeah, now, here's a good loop. I wonder if he knew how to do a dove tail joint and make a square box. Over.
I want to hear Monty continue.
Because you only there was subconscious past live lessons, and I got stuck in that loop because that's the only thing I knew. I couldn't break out of it, and it's been going on for a while. And for me, I've always sort of just survived, never been comfortable. I got comfortable for just surviving. And there's an element of I haven't had recognition for most of my life where I would do things, and if someone said thank you, it felt off, or I would do things or I say a joke and people just take the joke and get praise and all that type of stuff. So that was in the October, so November, December, that's 2.5 months ago. And I would say that's the programming's breaking down. Even if on a certain level that loop has disappeared, I'm going to go with what you're saying, Viking, is that the pathways in the brain are still breaking down, and so it's like an echo of it, where I'm getting better and moving forward, but because I'm starting my own business, the mind's not. It could be a form of doubt. It's like, well, where am I going to get the money from? It's like, well, hang on, no. If I do the work, and so that's where I'm at.
Yeah, well, so excuse me. It is doubt, because you're not trusting the process. Once you trust the process, you're either all in or you're all out. You have to literally give yourself permission. Then you have to have the strength and courage to start believing what you see to be true. You're seeing your vision. Visions are so important. You cannot move forward in life without a vision. This is how evolution occurs, with a vision. One of the most constructive ways you can manifest and indoctrinate your vision is to write it down. I mean, this is what the Galactics are saying. I've been saying this for years. When you write it down, you put it into the universal flow. So you have to, on one side of the page, you have to open up a book, and then on the left side of the page, you write down all your fears, your encumbrances, your poverty, your doubts, your insecurities, everything that you currently are facing. On the other side of the page, you write down everything that you wish to manifest, how you see yourself in a year, how you see yourself economically, spiritually, fundamentally, in your creative flow, how you wish your life to be manifesting, where you want to be living, your lifestyle. You write all this down, and this bullet points. You're not doing paragraphs here, you're doing bullet points, no more than a sentence, right? And then you basically tape those 2 pages together, and you should have done this on the solstice, but this is still a good time. And then on the cross quarters, which is coming up here, you open it up and you'll be amazed that just by writing it down. See, it's an encumbrance because it's subconsciously being held back because your conscious mind can't accept it or doesn't know how to process it. But by writing it down, you brought it into your conscious mind. That brings it into the loop. That brings it into the loop of evolution. To the loop of what's referred to as the healing process, is the letting go. It's not healing, you're letting go. And you're awakening to your greater dynamics, your quantum dynamics. Just by writing it down, in 5 to 8 weeks, half of those things are going to disappear. On the other side of the page, you'll be able to circle the ones that have manifested because they're incongruent to one another. Your codes are incongruent to your codexes. Your left side are all the code, the wet wiring of the brain. It's the programming, the source coding that you have been plagued with. The right side is now your codexes, and you're coming from the creative will of your heart monad, your quantum dynamics. So you have to bring it in a physical form, pen to paper.
Yeah, that's why I rather buy books, because by holding it, there's a different, instead of looking at a screen reading, there is a different process from actually reading books and the smell. You learn more, even writing it down instead of typing, the brain works. What I find fascinating is that with the doubt, I actually do have a backup plan, which, quite easily I'll get a job. And so, but then that's sort of part of the doubtness, if I can say it that way. And yet I step back and I find that fascinating. It's like, well, even if I do have a backup plan and there's still doubt, I still have the same feeling. I'm going to lean towards that I'm supposed to do it, because there's a block there. So instead of an easy way out, there is still, you know what I mean? There's a safety net, but there's still, knowing that there's that sort of fog or malaise, mud stopping me from going through. And that gives me hope, because... Yeah, go ahead.
Well, no, it's true. There's an expression, don't give up your day job. This is what a lot of people have, this way of manifesting at least enough money to survive, but then on their off time, they're doing their passion, until you can make money doing your passion, you have a day job. This is like kind of the way it aggresses is in prosperity. you're coming from scratch here, trying to manifest your vision, but not having any kind of sustenance to survive on. It's a tough road, not impossible, but having a day job may not be a bad idea.
Yeah, and so it's in the mix, and so we'll see what actually does happen. Now we've got about 6 minutes to go. I've enjoyed the chat. That went quickly. Bit of time travel. I'm trying to manipulate time where it's like, oh, this may be boring, so let's move it up. And then if I wake up before my alarm goes off in the morning, it's like, okay, I'm going to slow time down. So manipulating the flow there. And it's been interesting, especially Paul agreed to this. This summer's been extremely weird. Like it's dark, overcast, it's slightly warm. It's there's change across the board with everything. So any final thoughts or passing comments?
Well, no, the winds of change are definitely upon us. I mean, we are in transit. Life as you know it is not. I mean, if you're still locking into the holidays and being a weekend warrior and your 9 to 5 and your 401ks, you're going to be absolutely shocked and probably catatonic when things start to really ramp up. It has not ramped up yet, but we are in the process. We are in the pipe. And it's like a steam engine, it takes off slow, but that engine is in motion. And once it gets to be half speed, it's going to be even more chaotic if you're still holding on to this false precept. But if you're letting go and unifying your left side and right side of your brain, coming from your passion, having a vision, you're going to be actually anecdoted with all types of possibilities beyond your perception. Best to prepare and open up and just clearing out the debris that's keeping it from it. All that debris needs to be coming into spring on this side of the world. Time to do your spring cleaning and get rid of all the garbage that's holding you back. So anyway, Friday on my show on the Galactic Interstellar Council, Chris is on vacation, so I'm going to be bringing in a guest, Ted Marr, who is an intuitive channel. He channels JFK, Gandhi, Martin Luther King. He's a very prolific channeler. I'll be interviewing him, and we'll be tossing the ball back and forth on this galactic awakening. Thank you, Monty. Thank you, Oswald.
Interesting. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, thank you, Paul. So we've still got 4 minutes, so it'd be interesting to see what is going on. So just stay centered, go into your heart space, go within, which I think most religions and philosophies have said, and just observe. Don't try and pick a side, because observe other people that do, where they pick one or the other, and you can see the energy ramping up in the anger, where I've seen like the people are falling into their roles, where if they are part of the climate change group, or like they're referred to as the cult, the cult or the alarmists, and then you have other people saying, oh no, it's arsonists, as an example. They choose their role, and then they go De Niro in full method acting type thing, instead of actually say having conversations. They get a new bit of information and go, well, hang on, that seems a bit interesting. Everyone's very steadfast. There's not much fluidity, where it's my way or the highway type of aspect, where I could have a conversation with Paul where it's like, bananas are awesome, and then he can go, yes, but have you had a kiwi fruit? Ooh. And instead of go ahead.
Or there's 56 varieties of bananas. It's like
there you go.
They're all stuck on the generic form of what a banana is. But I'm sure you've been to India, where there's all kinds of bananas.
Yeah. That's exactly what I mean. Yeah, it's like did you know there's 57 bananas? It's like, no, I'm happy with mine. My banana. This is my banana, and this is all got it. I don't know. I think it's part of the awakening where people are feeling it's, and that would fall into the deep state pushing their agenda by you have to pick a side, and it's either one or the other, where you either hate Trump or you love Trump. Well, I'm in the middle where I'm glad Hillary lost. So,
well, also what they're saying is not to have a side, just be attentive and aware, and just find your center, and as Q often said, just get a bowl of popcorn and enjoy the show, because you can get lost in it, and you get lost by just having an opinion staples you into the 3D. You got to be very careful, what's keeping you stapled in, and how are you able to find your authentic self, because you lose your authentic self once you start to have an opinion.